Hello. Welcome, everybody. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author. And today, as you can see, I have a lovely guest. Say hello, Devon.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, we're here because we're going to be doing a buddy read discussion. We read this book, and it's a funny story how we decided to read it together, too. So we're going to explore that and talk about the book. It is Revolt. I can take the buddy read sticker off now. Revolt of the Elites, The Betrayal of Democracy by Christopher Lasch. I think it's from 1993. So it's a classic we'll be revisiting. And let me introduce my friend Devon. Devon Gambrell-Clark is another indie author in the YouTube space. She writes fantasy and has beautiful books and has done a Kickstarter and has amazing things. So I will let her introduce her genre and what she likes to write and talk about on YouTube.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Like Margaret said, my name is Devon. I write fantasy and steampunk with a snarky female leads and a splash of romance. Like she said, I just finished my Kickstarter. I'm getting ready to do fulfillment. I've got 2 books coming out in February and March, which are the funny story. I wrote my first book last, or my last book first. So I had to go back in time to start over in the timeline. So, and because it was a cliffhanger, I decided to wait to release the second one. So dual release.
Having mercy on your readers' nerves. See, much appreciation there, right?
Yes. And most of my YouTube content, when I finally get back to it in a couple of weeks, will be for fantasy readers. But there will be some Booktube stuff in there too.
Awesome. If you would like to subscribe, Devon's newsletter link is in the chat. And I hear there's like a special newsletter subscription party coming up. So you might want to do that if you're interested in fantasy. So yeah, AuthorTube. Woohoo! And that's how I met Devon, is obviously authors on YouTube through the AuthorTube Writing Conference. So yes. Lots of work going into things, and none of which we're going to be talking about today because today is fun-ish. So I'm just going to say hello to the chat who came in. Julie's here. Thanks for inviting us to your buddy read discussion, of course. Dissident Knight, hello, welcome. Anita is here. A.F. Stewart, fellow indie author, hello. And Felicia, lovely to see you. And Lynn at Mad World. Perfect. So welcome, everybody. You're on Booktube. And if you have questions, as always, just pop it in the chat. So how would you describe this genre of a book, first of all?
I have to say that it was written for the times that it was written for, but I see a lot of recurring events in there. But
so like nonfiction, certainly.
Nonfiction, yes.
Politics/sociology?
Yes.
Because, okay, I held this up, I think, for some video where I was like, I might read this soon. And then you said, I read that book. I was thinking about rereading it. So can you give us the backstory about how you came to know Christopher Lasch?
Yes. So I was in college. I believe my oldest son at that time was maybe 2, and I was in a sociology class. And we read parts of this book, and we had to do an essay and all of that. Sadly, I don't have that essay because I did have an A on it. I remember that because I hated sociology.
Oh no! Both my for social majors. So
well, it wasn't so much as the sociology itself. It was the teacher that I had for sociology.
All right. And my dad is a sociology professor, so you know.
Well, did he teach in Washington State?
No.
Okay. He wasn't my teacher.
Clear the air there.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, and did you just think of rereading it because I talked about it, or was it just sort of on the back of your mind as like a political thing that you wanted to revisit?
It was on the back of my mind for the political thing, and of course we're reliving the times, I feel. I don't recall too much from the 1990s. I turned 13 in 1996, so politics were not high on my priority list then.
Yeah, I was 15, so yeah. Right. And to give you a taste so that you know where we're talking about, I mean, you might pull something from the title, Revolt of the Elites. That's what caught my eye when I saw this in the used bookstore, because we have these ideas about the social contract and our obligations to others and how we should behave in a society together. And these are his ideas about how they're breaking apart and how our sort of contracts with and among people in the United States are in trouble, shall we say. And just as in the 90s, I think it's, as you say, not recurring, but like intensified. So the sections of the books, the parts of the book are called The Intensification of Social Divisions. Part 2 is Democratic Discourse in Decline. AI videos notwithstanding. And then the third one is The Dark Night of the Soul, where he talks a little bit more about philosophy and like psychology aspects. So it's really interesting. It touches on a lot of things that I'm very curious about. And so that's what caught my eye when I picked this up and wanted to read it, because I want to know why things are happening so that we can have better solutions rather than just go, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we have a Leslie here. Hello. Oh, okay. Lynn says, I read it many years ago. This should jog my memory. All right. And Gareth's here to say hi. Sounds like a great book. Yeah. Super interesting socioeconomic observations, but also a lot of rambling. So Devon, did you want to tell us like overall impressions and maybe use the word rambling?
Yes. Overall impressions, definitely rambling. I have to say the first section, even though again, I was like preteen teenager in the 90s. I remember going to a lot of protests with my parents. So a lot of the things that he talked about, the lower middle class, did not compute to me because from the way he wrote it, it says that that class didn't really care. But they were fine with that. And that's not what I grew up with.
Interesting. Yeah. So when I was reading through this, there were lots of sections where I was like, I was starting out on the same page. And I was like, yes, you have this first statement. And then he goes on to one thing and another thing, and then brings up like a classic sort of commentary style. But he doesn't support some of the things he says. And by this time, he was like in his 70s. This is the last book he published before he died. He did it with his daughter's help. So I think a little bit of the rambling feel or tone is because he was older and he had a lot of things he wanted to pull together, which fair enough. But the evidentiary part sort of struck me. Like every time I was like, and what are you saying to support this? Like, do you have studies? Do you have, any citations? No, it's all commentary. And there's an index and the biography, but like not citations in the text.
Yeah. I would like to add that when I first got this book for my college class, this is a collection of his essays. So they went on for a few years and he bundled that collection into this.
Okay. So it's from different publications and then you just put it together.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can see some of his changing of views as you go along. But yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Maybe that's why I was confused about some things, because it seemed like I was on the same page with him, and then it sort of veered, and I'm like, but wait, how can you have these both at the same time? And like what? Yeah. Okay. I have like a little, let's see if I missed any of the questions I wanted to start with. Yeah. All right. So we're good. I have notes that I took, like some of the things that I thought were the most outrageous that I turned the corners down for, that I did a lot of writing in this, a lot of underlining and a lot of writing in the margins, because I bought this book and it was all in pencil. So before you clutch your pearls. Yeah. Highlighting. I mean, like, just like, maybe you can't see it very well, but there's lots of underlining, which I haven't done in a book for a long time. But I felt very in conversation with this book. I felt like I was arguing with it a lot. Maybe aloud in the house. Yeah. Was the case. So one of the first things I thought had that feel of thinking you agree and then going, wait, I don't know if I do agree by the end of the paragraph, was on page 39, the beginning section, where he's talking about meritocracy versus aristocracy. And so I've actually mentioned this a couple times on the channel from other nonfiction politics books, that like some people think the aristocracy in the olden days, like 17th, 18th, 19th century, and from Britain, since we don't really have one in America, the attitudes that we inherited were of a type of social contract where it originated in the lord, the seigneur, is owning all the land and takes care of his people, meaning he's responsible for his tenants. And the tenants, the farmers, whatever job you do for the Lord, you pay a certain tithe and you go to war for the Lord when it's required. So there's this relationship of like obligation and rights on both sides. And so starting with that, and it's hereditary, right? So that's the key thing. He says the aristocracy allows for no brains, but it is imbued with ancient lineage and honor. I was like, so it sounds like this is a good thing to you. So that was kind of like a, okay. And then he compares it to meritocracy, which we would think modern age is a good thing, right? The people who know how to do the thing best rise to the top of the industry. And he criticizes the meritocracy approach because he thinks it's just fake. It's downplaying the hereditary privileges that got those meritocratic winners to the top. And that part I agree with. Like there is a bit of the American dream fakeness to the meritocracy, meaning it hides a lot of the hereditary privileges, right? But past not acknowledging those hereditary privileges, it also has no obligation to live up to responsibilities inherited from the past. So what he's saying is basically you have an aristocracy that keeps rising to the top, but they don't have any sense that they owe anything to anyone else because they got there on their own steam. They bootstrapped it. So what did you think about those two comparisons and like how real they reflect reality now?
What reminded me of was, what do they call that? For lack of a better word, the monopoly wars, where the government had to come in and,
antitrust,
JP Morgan and all like that.
Yeah, antitrust legislations. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That was the first thing that popped into my head. But yeah, I would have to agree with the way it is, because the American dream, when you come over, you don't really get that. Like you have to either be lucky to make it into the part of the elites, and this is just my interpretation, or you're just stuck there and it feels like the government's keeping you in that class sect. I'm probably veering off. I'm probably not.
No, it's that there's not a real even playing field. So if that is what you're sold from meritocracy, that's not the real truth. And so, that some of the other points come up to that. But did you think that he was advocating some sort of return to aristocracy, or was he just looking to it as we need the obligation somehow because that's what balanced the old system? And I'm like, really? Was it balanced? Because it didn't seem to mesh for me.
To me, it was like the romance of it all. Like, look how beautiful this system was in the past, and we need to bring it back. But that doesn't work for America. And so I think he was reminiscing about the olden days, historical wise, and the glitz and glamour of it all. Maybe the 1920s.
Okay. Lynn says, it's my recollection of his having made some very salient points, but also from a privileged white male's perspective. So nostalgia for the past was built in. Yeah. Observant,
I actually wrote that note in the side margin.
Which one? Nostalgia?
The nostalgia one. Where was it? Yes. Page 27, I wrote, wow, exclamation mark. I feel he's talking about white suburbia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Greg snuck in the door. Hello, Greg. Welcome. Anita says, history has proved repeated elites only have the illusion of power. Repeated. I think history has proved repeatedly elites only have the illusion of power. Well, then who has the power? I'm missing a point there. So let me know what you're driving at, because I think I'm missing it. Gareth says, I agree. The dice is loaded in the newer, less obvious class systems. Yeah. Yeah. Nostalgic about an aristocratic normality is a shame. Yeah. Okay. So yes, history has proved repeatedly elites only have the illusion of power. So then who has the actual power is what my follow-up question would be. Oh, Greg's asking, where'd you go to college? He got his master's at Washington State.
Oh, that's awesome. So we were stationed on Whidbey Island. So I just went to the community college 5 minutes down the road from where I lived.
West Side. Awesome. Okay, so that is the sort of staging ground, the background. And then the next quote I had was about mobility. So we'll get into the American dream part. On page 52, he's talking about hierarchy, mobility, and faith in the US. And this is interesting because when I think of faith, when a lot of us think of faith, we think of religion, but he's not talking about that. He's talking about faith in the society. So that's interesting.
In the system.
Mm-hmm. The system. That sounds so ominous. So let's see. The American dream of social mobility is a, quote, necessary illusion reconciling people to inequality and softening troubling contradictions between egalitarian ideology and hierarchical division of labor required by modern industry. So basically, that means the American dream is a dream because it's a fairy tale. Social mobility, the possibility of it, is a necessary illusion because we have the ideal? No, the ideal of like, you can make it. Like, yeah, the Horatio Algier stories. But it's so hard to do that because you need hierarchical division for modern industry. You need people at all levels of society for economic reasons, the way we have it set up. And that made me think of Octavia Butler because she's about hierarchy, and she calls that the human contradiction, that we want equality, but we crave hierarchy for power reasons. I thought that was really interesting. What did you think about the hierarchy and mobility piece that sort of came together?
I believe that it is true because you can't have, again, going back to kingdoms and whatever, it's the peasants and the common folk that put bread on the king's table, right? So you need that working class up. You need the tradesmen, you need the farmers, you need the people in charge. Pretty much somebody you can point the finger to blame. Yeah, that's how I summed it up. Very simplified, probably oversimplified.
Yeah, the least necessary person is the one at the top, right?
Exactly, yes. Because once that person like does wrong to the working class, they're overthrown or taken out or, removed from their seat of power.
Mm-hmm. Do you follow, this is a bit of a sidelet. Do you follow Sharon J. Zhao?
No, but I have heard the name.
They're an author that does a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Crossover shorts with their fiction. They have a really, and of course I'm going to blitz on the name. They have 2 books out, I think, very successful fantasy things, but they're obsessed with like Napoleon and the French Revolution and Robespierre and all this stuff. So they had a short recently that was like about the No Kings protests, and it was Robespierre or someone who was from the guillotine committee, and they said something like, when the real folks who are no kings show up, and they're just like, oh, they're brushing their card with the guillotine, like, you know what's coming. Yeah. It's so funny. Anita's saying the people have the power. So again, French Revolution lessons. I feel like this exists in different places in my brain. Like, why do we feel like we don't have the power when we have the numbers? Well, because we're not organized, because we're not unified.
Yes.
I think that's the difference. Yeah. Revolutions, creation of unions, movements of people working collectively have brought down empires. Yes. Hopeful message. Thank you, Anita. And Greg says, Whidbey Island is too late for me. Fancy. Okay, so my follow-up question to that was, he says the left blames the individual instead of the system. And I thought that was something that the right did. So when we think about people who make it to the top, I feel like the right is the side of politics that says, well, the person made it all on their own. And if you're in, you know, a situation where you need food stamps and you need grants and you need help because your earning potential is not enough to live, then they say, well, that's your fault, and they blame the individual. And he's saying that the left does that instead of blaming the system. And I was like, no, I don't know if that was true in the 90s or now. So,
that wasn't true in the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the welfare programs that they had in the 90s, they did seem very punitive, meaning like, you know, like requirements and very onerous. And I think that's probably still true today. So in that respect, the left who was creating those programs was sort of hedging their bets by saying, well, we're making people jump through all these hoops, which is crappy. But maybe that was why they were saying that's showing their belief that it's their fault individually. I don't know. That's a stretch. That's what I'm trying to figure out how he would say that.
As someone who grew up on food stamps and being dual military, $47 away from earning food stamps, living in base housing, the jumping through hoops, I feel, was the safeguard for the ones who were abusing the system, because there were people in that class abusing the system, selling their food stamps. But nowadays, it's a little harder to do it since it's all electronic. But as far as the blame game, no, I don't think so. There was the means of, yes, it is their fault for being on food stamps or needing to be on food stamps, but the job market's not there, especially in the rural areas.
You talking about now?
Now, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to respond? What do you mean when you say the left in general? What do you conceptualize?
I get the left and the right so mixed up because there are dividing factors between them, but in my mind, they're playing against each other.
Okay. That doesn't answer the question, Devon, but I'll let you off. Okay, so for me, the left, I mean mainly Democrats, because those are the ones who have the programs that would fall under the definition of liberal, meaning meaning generous with government programs and not afraid to use the state mechanism to correct for market failures in rare instances these days. Yeah. And the right as more conservative to me means that they want people to depend on their own resources more. And so they do not want the state to get bigger. And so it's local government, it's, you know, other organizations, etc.
Yeah.
Lynn says, did you find his category of elites was well-defined and accurate? He does not define it.
He does not define it at all. There's no definition.
I thought he included groupings that are not actually elites, like some grassroots activists.
I did see grassroots mentioned in here, but it was very brief. And again, there was no definition for it.
I think this is part of the not giving evidence point, where he will say a group and then not define what he means by using that name. And because meanings change over 30 years, like it was kind of kind of difficult, like reading a different language and trying to guess at the meaning.
Yes.
Yeah, so can't really respond to that one, Lynn. Sorry. Okay. Did you have a point that you wanted to bring up? I'm just gonna keep going if not, and you could like rebound.
Going back to the left and the right. So the left does activate safeguards. I think both sides really do play the blame game, while the left does try to help the lower classes. But I feel like they both do the blame.
Well, I mean,
people being in that situation.
Some of it can be justified, and some of it can be hiding.
Yes,
folks. That's my view, but obviously that's a biased view from someone on the left. So Greg says, in America, the Democrats are indeed liberals who are centrists. Yeah, I would agree with that. We have no left in America. Fair enough. Yeah, Gareth, I think would agree with you. Devon, if you don't know, Gareth is an author who's from Portsmouth in England, and so musician as well as an author, and he has loads and loads and loads of wonderful videos. So we get into a lot of economics discussions together, which are fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Let's see. The next one I have is on page 103, and it's about the rules of the market versus the state. So he critiques Rawls, R-A-W-L-S, and I have only vaguely a memory of studying Rawls in grad school for economics. Rawls values justice so as to increase the welfare state, which Lasch is against, and devalues social relations between individuals so as to increase the market presence, which I don't know what Lasch's opinion is. I think he also doesn't like that. And so it becomes a poor guide to the moral dilemmas. That's the quote. And I just thought that was a strange way to introduce. This is like the foundation of left versus right, liberal versus conservative, right? What do you want the market to take care of? What do you want the state to take care of? Where are their failures and externalities, et cetera? And he's talking about justice, meaning the welfare state needs to correct the not externalities, what would you call those? Inefficiencies of the market when people can't find work that will allow them to live, for example. But he says it devalues social relations. Rawls devalues social relations. So it wants the market to butt in where social networks are not allowing that activity to happen.
I found that whole section confusing. It was hard for me to follow. And I was looking for some sort of solution to be mentioned, but he writes no solutions.
No, because it's like this thing lurking in the back that he wants people to be religious, but then at the end he's like, religion is not the answer. So it's weird. A lot of his things come with the sort of buried inside the thing about, well, we lost our religion, we're disillusioned, and where do we get our moral compass after that? Did you come away with anything about that?
He's trying to get us to think about it, to maybe come up with our own ideas and solutions. But I couldn't interpret it. It felt so much like a riddle to try to break down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I probably need to write an essay on that.
His sentences jump from one like thing to another. It is quite hard to follow within the paragraphs, I thought too. Is moral regulation or cohesion not outside of both the state and the market is my conclusion to that. Meaning, like, in America, at least, religion has always been outside of the market and the state, right? Mm-hmm. Church and state are not the same. And so I feel like Lasch thinks that it used to be balanced. You used to have the moral compass from religion balanced with the state mechanisms to try that were directed by a moral compass. And when we have no longer that anchor and we're just free to say there's no standards, everything everyone does is fine, then there's no way to control the growth of the state because they can just try to overcorrect anything, which is weird because what are they using as their their blueprint if there's no anchor or compass. So I was
Right.
like, I don't know.
It toyed in my mind of the elites do have a religion. There's this unspoken thing where somebody has to state what church they go to or what religious faction they go to, but they don't take their faith or moral compass into the job space to help lead the country. Like I said, the whole section.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to circle the moral part because I think we'll probably circle back when we talk about standards and diversity because he had some very not cool things to say. So that may help us get like more clear on this. The 90s were a long time ago, y'all.
They were a very long time ago.
Julie has a comment here regarding the pull yourself up by the bootstraps theory. I can't counter that with if one person can do that, it doesn't follow that every person can do that. That is true. That is true. Yeah. And then Libro, hello. By excluding middle and most lower middle class people from welfare programs and benefits, it creates resentment in middle class people and leads them to vote for right-leaning candidates. Interesting point. I wonder if that's true across nations.
Oh, I don't know. Across nations.
Yeah, I think Libro is in Texas, but I wonder. Yeah, I've read a couple books about like the Scandinavian social welfare state and how it's so different and how the assumptions are so different.
That'll be an interesting read.
Yeah. A lot of the social media things I see, they're talking about the economy and trying to puzzle out why, because this is the reason I'm reading this book as well. Why are people like this? is pointing out like people who think, how did that last one put it? They said they would rather people they don't like not get a benefit than that they both do. So it's going back to like the civil rights movement and like equal access to facilities, which I'm reading about on another buttery. In that, or like the book about the swimming pools and how like people had community swimming pools, and then as soon as they were desegregated, people like cemented them over because they would rather not have to share a swimming pool with Black people in the community than have it themselves at all. And it's just like this human. Is it American? Is it human? I don't know. But the means testing is part of that. I think the exclusion and not making it universal.
Yeah.
Libra also followed up with the benefits from Medicaid and similar programs could be extended to include them, middle class, including childcare, but it isn't. Yeah. And that's the hedging that I was talking about. I think they're trying to do that because they don't want to be attacked on the you're being too generous score politically, because they're vulnerable to political criticism that way.
They're trying to tiptoe in to make larger changes later.
Which is crazy because when you think about it, like, wouldn't all the middle class then be behind you because like you expanded the program so that they have one less thing to worry about?
Yeah, because childcare is. I quit working when the kids were little. There was no point to go to work.
Yeah. So I think the key there is that the Democrats, I won't say the left because Greg is right. The Democrats have found that expanding those programs and making them available to more people doesn't get them the vote because they are vulnerable to political capture, and there will be another single issue that someone will bring up, and then that will make them move the other way, like vote for the other party. True won't mention on here. Okay, and he just says religious morality took a wrong turn in the Victorian era and has never recovered. Not that it was shaky before that. Not that it wasn't shaky before that, I think is what she meant to say. I would say before Victorians, I do get the sense in my readings as well that it was much more liberal, much more libertarian, if you will, in terms of you do what you want to do, you be you kind of thing. And then the Victorians, it was just everyone's in everyone's business and wanting to dictate.
I think that was change of the generations, though, too, because we were still in that new stage in the Victorian era.
New stage of what?
Well, we had only been a country at that point for how many years?
Oh, you're talking about US. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Gotcha.
Sorry. So yeah, and then it took off from there. We were our own. We proved that we were our own. So things changed.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about it in terms of the founding of the country. So if you leave the real Victorians out of it, and you think about the founders and how there were some deists, there were some, like very experimental religions, but very firm political principles coming out of Locke and Thomas. I'm gonna forget his name. Who's the firebrand? The Rights of Man. Anyway, very liberal thinkers at the beginning of the revolution. And then what causes America to turn from that to like prudery? Is there something that changed, or did we never really get that run at a liberal attitudes about the body and things like that?
You have to think when America was founded, we had 3 political parties. I forget when we only went down to 2.
I mean, I think it was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was very quick. President?
And says the critique is there, but he doesn't offer real solutions. So I think that's about your thing about moral guide. That would have been disruptive of people like himself that benefited from much of the system. I think that's why nostalgia is safe for him. Yeah. Agree. Libro says, I hear the resentment from elementary school teachers I know who are angry about healthcare costs, for example, and resent the parents of their students who are on welfare. Ah, interesting. Okay, so in terms of setting the classes against each other when the real enemy is the people who are hoarding all the wealth at the top, yeah, that's students and parents who are on welfare who qualify lower salaries, who qualify for benefits, and then elementary school teachers who are probably just above that line. Yeah, and especially coming up. I heard someone's hopeful take that people are finally hearing about what their healthcare premiums are going to go up to next year. And so they're people who have not been paying attention to politics are finally realizing, oh, is this that big beautiful bill coming into action? Oh, maybe we don't want to open the government to let that continue. I mean, we do want to open the government and then take it off the table. Yeah. I think I'm getting what you're saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth, so that's why I'm doing it hesitantly. Yeah, brain is fried. No worries. Lynn says, I really appreciate distinguishing the left from the Democrats because there definitely is no left. Same here in Canada, just an illusion, and then govern for the rich. Hobbes is not, no. Paine. Thank you. Libro got it. Thomas Paine. Like, Locke and Hobbes are the duo. It's not Hobbes that I'm thinking of. Yeah. Thomas Paine.
Oh, I haven't heard Thomas Paine's name in a long time.
The Rights of Man. Yeah.
I should go back to school.
Libro says the Declaration of Independence was the radical liberal ideal. Okay, and then the Constitution was a conservative reaction to it. Interesting. I'd never heard it framed that way. The Bill of Rights was a liberal reaction to it. That's interesting. Yeah, I can see that. I mean,
yeah, it makes sense.
My teachers never put it that way, but yeah, makes sense.
They had to be politically correct in school.
In a Catholic school? I don't know. They were sort of biased by their rules. So yeah. All right. So here's another one where another book that I had came into play, and that is, I don't know if anyone will be surprised, A Field Guide to Climate Anxiety. So a book about climate anxiety by Sarah Jaquette Ray. And page 104, 105, right after that, it's a place where he's talking about individual responsibility versus social responsibility, and also compassion versus respect. So he's finding faults with some of these traditionally bowed to formats. I'm not saying this very well, so let me just do the quote. Compassion subverts civic life, which depends not on compassion, but on mutual respect. And so he says having compassion is not the same as having respect. You need impersonal standards. Lasch's mutual respect needs impersonal standards, and I put that in quote. So my reaction to that is like, okay. His impersonal standards don't recognize bias. So in the 90s, I don't think we were at the point yet where we had proved bias in all the systems that the state is running. And so I found that to be very discouraging. Compassion subverts civic life. What did you think about any of the, because this is the era when compassionate conservative came into vogue, I think, as a phrase describing, and I was like, no.
No, not at all. I think I honestly skipped over this part because it just,
It's the same section, yeah.
Yeah. It's compassion and respect taught to me growing up was one and the same. But going to school, that was not the same thing.
How do they separate it at school? What was the difference?
I grew up in a primarily Russian immigrant neighborhood growing up. My parents kept me out of, well, of course, we didn't qualify for the middle class or upper middle class. So we were like on the cusp of the poorer neighborhood and then the Russians. I was still segregated within the classroom from my early memory. But I'm sure I'm missing the point here.
It's like the difference between compassion and respect. So here's where this book comes in it for me. So when I think of compassion, I think of like sort of a like the different types of love. There's eros, there's amor, there's the third one, caritas. This is the Catholic school coming out, right? Caritas is the love for all the world, like the sort of impersonal love. And that's what I think of when I think of compassion. It's like your heart cries out when someone is in a bad situation or needing help, right?
Yeah.
And then respect, I feel like, I don't want to say needs to be earned. I feel like it's a baseline that you should start with respecting someone until you've interacted with them and know that that's not like going to be fair to you. But I find that many people in America sort people with this hierarchy and they prejudge. And so that leads them to say, this person deserves my respect because they have more money and this person does not because they don't. And it's like, we have this sort of inculcated into us from a societal, I don't know, sponge, I feel like. And so
I have better words for what you asked. People felt sorry for me, but I still did not get the respect. They felt sorry for the situation I was in, but I was still not respected, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does relate to his point, I think, because he talks about compassion being like, I'm better than you, and so I'm going to look down and feel sorry for you, which is not the same as, wow, we both deserve the same treatment, and it's unfair that you're not getting the respect. Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
It took me a while to put those words together.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. This book talks about compassion versus empathy, and it craps all over empathy. So, which is weird because I think just a few years ago was when everyone was like, oh, Brene Brown and empathy versus sympathy. Sympathy is what makes you feel like crap because someone's feeling sorry for you, but like not helping you, right? Or not understanding. And so empathy was like the better option. But this book is saying, no, compassion, the sort of everyone deserves, water, and food and shelter and respect. And so we're going to all work to get this for everybody is different from empathy saying, oh, I feel the pain of this interaction. I feel the pain you're feeling. That makes me feel bad. I don't want to be around you. Like, I was like, what? This was like really laying it down. This is going to be in my next wrap up. But so I was just like really puzzling over that one. I think that's maybe new. So I don't know how you feel. Compassion, respect, empathy. We can sort of play around with what they mean in different circumstances. But
yeah.
Do you think, I guess, do any of those help civic life? What do you think is their relationship to civic life? Which one should we cultivate the most?
I think the baseline would be compassion, because if you have the compassion, you can work towards solving whatever the solution would be.
Now, see, I'm going to say I would start with respect. I guess I'm more on Christopher Lasch's side on this one, because I think if you don't have respect as a baseline and you're working on this hierarchical, who do I have to be respectful to?
That does make sense.
Gets a little bitter,
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we have a comment on these. Ebro following up with Abraham Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation saw it as an extension of Jefferson's vision that all men were created equal, a radical idea at the time. The perpetuation of slavery was keeping alive feudal ideas. And then feudal is the aristocracy piece. So
yes.
Yeah. Egalitarianism, I think, is the radical idea that people are equal, right?
Right. So new age.
It's so basic. I don't know why it's so hard. So people will say politics follows cultural shift rather than the other way around. You can't make a bill unless people are already changing their minds about something. So I'm like, so why is the cultural shift on this so hard? Just to like...
Because some people like others to think for them and say, I like the way he talks. I don't understand what he's saying, but I'm going to follow him.
I think it's insecurity. I think it's people are insecure about their own position. And so they want to be on top of someone. So they just put other people down.
Like the bully system?
Yeah. Yeah. Like a pecking order.
Yeah.
In a crowd of chickens.
Yeah.
All right. My next one had to do with the cities, which I thought was a really cool chapter. Page 120. He's talking about Oldenburg, which is Ray Oldenburg is a sociology author who talked about third places. And third places are agents of social control. And he doesn't mean like government control, social control. He means like ways that a society regulates itself. Like you have to have contact, you have to mediate, you have to like interact. Otherwise you're isolated, like, I don't know, in the pandemic. Cities are necessary for conversation. Third places are needed to practice decency. And this is another weird word that is hard to define for some folks. So I thought that was a really important thing. This is why we have cities. I like cities. And so today, especially after our pandemic experience, I would say the third places, the cities where we get to practice talking to strangers and being civil are needed to practice decency. So get us out of our silos of whatever industry we're in or situation, and also have social exposure to diversity. It's like people who aren't exactly the same as us. So what did you think about the third places piece?
I instantly thought of the projects.
Meaning?
Oh, do you know what the projects are?
Like Section 8 housing, or like the tall housing projects in big cities?
Section 8 housing.
Yeah.
To get people out to, explore their surroundings. I kind of took it as like I don't know. There's still a segregation of the classes. almost. So you have to leave your silo, your safe place, to get in to meet other people of other cultural backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Like, my interpretation of this book always goes back to growing up. So I put places to the words, but it was, again, a little hard to follow.
So I read a book about gentrification recently, and it talked about Detroit, and it talked about several cases where, you know, it's sort of like a golden child of gentrification. People like to point to it for its positive results, like all this redevelopment, but that doesn't account for all the negatives for the people who are already living there. So
Yeah.
you've got, like, this one guy was interviewed, and he's retired. He's like 70. He's at home, and he can walk like the one block to the grocery store, to the social event, to the doctor's office, because it was in downtown where the housing, social housing was. And now he's been moved out because it's not pretty. So they're redeveloping and making it very bougie. So he's been moved out like 20 miles, and you have to use a car to get in because there's no transport except in the center where it's convenient for all the new folks who came in. And so it's like, yeah, this doesn't measure the loss of the third places for the people who can't afford to be there. Like, there's no way they're going to find everyone who used to live around them, who they used to encounter on the street, like those social interactions that used to have. Now they're going to be isolated. And so I thought that was a really good book. And then that's what this made me think of, is like, this is why we need it. This is why we need a core.
That happened to my dad. So my dad lives on his retired paycheck from the military and Social Security. They recently upped his rent to the point that he can't pay to live there anymore, while building new houses across the street.
The same company.
Yeah. So he left that apartment and is now in a new apartment where, instead of hopping on the bus to go downtown, doctor's appointments and all like that, he now has to drive everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So now he's like roped into the car economy, which is insurance and registration and mechanical failure and all that stuff. And you're not with other people on the bus, so you're not interacting with other people.
Yeah. Oh, and my aunt left months ago because they lived in the same building.
Yeah, that's tough, because he doesn't go into this at all. He doesn't go into like extended family systems and social milieu.
He does. Some of my other family members live outside of town, so he does have a car and things like that, but he didn't have to go as often. It was like a weekend thing, or, once or twice a week.
Yeah. I mean, Lasch, in the book, he doesn't talk about like,
oh yes, in the book,
individual links and like how they're solid when you're in a certain situation, and then when you break that for like a new economic thing, you don't count the cost of people who now have to drive more and pay more. And
I think he's a little disconnected with the lower middle classes.
Yeah. All right. So Libro says Lincoln came from nothing and became someone he never could have been in England or Europe. U.S. he wanted preserved was something new and fragile in the world, which is why he gave everything to preserving the Union. That's a good hero statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad because, like, if he had lived and seen what happened with Reconstruction, and then how everything just snapped back into position of like terror and inequality, like, yeah, that would have been tough for old Abe. Greg says, Devon, I find it powerful that you relate these words to your own situation. Lasch probably was not thinking about situations like yours, so you make the connection. I love that. Yeah. Let's see. I've got 3 more here. Page 184. Oh, here's my commentary. A way passé view of academic emancipation rhetoric sees the study of what. Okay, so in this section, he talks about the ivory tower, the universities of his day in the 90s, talking excoriatingly of white Western males before 1900. So basically, he's upset that the professors of his day are lumping all the white Western males before 1900 into one category and not giving them their fair due, right? Because, as he says, they have the highest achievements of civilization, and I'm just like, my dude, sit down. I called it way passe. I was like, this is not the way. Yeah. Did you have reactions about that before I go a little more into like my thoughts?
I kind of just so he quotes Kimball's words, right? And it says this kind of thinking implies that the highest achievements of civilization are somehow off limits or inaccessible to certain groups. Yes and no, because you have those diamonds in the rough that make their way up there. I mean, let me just bring up Obama was born and raised in poverty, right? He became the president.
Right.
Jeff Bezos was laid off from his job and started a company in his garage. There's those people who come up, you know?
Yeah. I'm not gonna respond to the Bezos example at this time. People know my thoughts. But yeah. So the thing that Lasch is very upset about is that like all these great thinkers and interesting radical, maybe not radical, egalitarian historical works or whatever will not be highlighted anymore because everyone needs to have their own class dedicated to very niche subjects, of which it is not the majority American view, right? So like Native American basket weaving, to give a flippant example. But also like Octavia Butler, 20th century African American women writers, like they deserve a seat at the table. But he's like, but then you're cutting back on all the greatest, highest achievements of civilization. And I'm like, again, my dude.
History moves forward.
Right.
History moves forward. You got to, you know, acknowledge the new and upcoming greatness. Still, you know, still teach the old ways, but
right.
New age, new ideas.
So I'm reading a book about Oxford at the moment now, and there's various attitudes about Oxford and how old-fashioned it is and how they still learn Greek and Latin and have these weird debates and stuff. So it's very left over from their, 1,000-year-old tradition, which is fine. But I think you can value that tradition and incorporate it into specific thematic tracks while also including people who make up the nation today, people who are on the scene arguing, debating, and formulating commentary today. So I took apart his arguments. It's evident that BIPOC scholars can understand. So when you say it's a diamond in the rough, it's like there are definite people who are geniuses who, despite whatever their circumstances are, can get into those spaces, understand everything, and plow right on. So it proves that they can. It's not an impossibility.
And those people inspire more to do the same because this is how I did it. Come join me.
Right.
And those people aren't stingy.
Yes, they don't pull the ladder up behind them.
Yes.
Yeah. In terms of missing opportunities to value these achievements, white students can do that just as well as students of color in terms of missing opportunities. So when you have a class full of people and there are some that are like raring to go and some that are like chewing gum and spitting on their neighbor, like that is equal opportunity. That is not something dependent on the makeup of society. I think that's a spectrum that's constant. And my third point, that just like getting at what his reasonings were, it's unfair to limit studies to the conventional because if anywhere should be a good place for the marketplace of ideas, it should be the ivory tower. If, universities weren't so governed by money, which is my little caveat at the end. So in case that didn't make sense, I'm using sort of buzzwords here. Conservatives often like to use the phrase marketplace of ideas, which is a way of saying, well, if you have a good idea and you get it out there, it'll rise to the top. It's another return to the meritocracy ideal, right? Well, we know that's not true because in the real world, much like power is given to those who already have it, etc. But the ivory tower is supposed to be sheltered and secluded and a place where like you can experiment and have radical ideas and learn and discuss and debate. So like, shouldn't that be where you are able to talk about new ideas and have them argue with the old?
So nowadays, would that be considered the internet?
The marketplace of ideas?
No, the ivory tower.
Ivory tower. No, because ivory tower is like a minority, whereas everyone has access to the internet.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Ivory tower is like picturing the Oxford Dawn or the priest and the alchemist up in the tower. Like the very few who know the real situation, cooking away their potions. Yeah. Anita says some of those high achievements were by women. Yes, exactly. They just didn't get the credit. Yes. Call that BS, Anita. Good job. Greg says, every 10 minutes, Margaret pulls out a book and says, I'm currently reading this other book that reminds me. I did my homework.
I love it. Who's the author of that Oxford one? I was trying to write the name down.
Jan Morris.
Famous
travel writer, but also trans icon, historian commentator.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the university piece got me worked up a bit, which is weird because you would think he was a university professor. So like, why is he so out of touch with all that stuff? This is when it was all happening. It was all popping off in the 90s.
But he didn't go socialize with anybody else.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe not. All right, and then we have a piece about shame in society, and this is page 207 to 210, which might be the part 3. I'm not sure if you got there.
I did not get that part.
Okay, do you remember any of the pieces about shame?
Let me check my notes real quick. You can go ahead.
Okay, because a lot of these things, like, I've heard people talk about shame. Once again, it's a Brene Brown throwback where she's talking about shame and guilt and how productive or not one or the other is. So we've had that as like a group psychology session. But Lasch is talking about shame and society and like Freudian analysts and saying, okay, Freudian analysis has some merit to it, but people have latched on to this idea that society is like a person. And so like you need to get rid of all the shame and just like let it all hang out with everyone doing whatever they want. And he's like, no, that's not helping. And I was like, he doesn't like the metaphor. That's part of it. Did you find anything?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm kind of lost in like the Freudian stuff because I never read or studied anything Freud, but he really doesn't like this. And I found it a little weird. Again, trying to figure out what he's getting against from 30 years later is hard. So Lasch values Freudian analysis, but lambasts those who use the shame metaphor at the society level. Fine. But both bodies mediate esteem and contempt. So I'm trying to figure out like, so a person who has shame because of something they did, may be motivated to change their behavior. A society that has shame about something that it did, for example, the U.S. and slavery, like, is it motivating to know, to have that on display, to talk about it, to work on it in some way to make it better? I mean, I think it is. We're like processing it still. But I don't know what Lasch is. I didn't really get his like thing about this metaphor. He said public policies based on the therapeutic model have failed over and over. and not because working alongside the market. Oh, okay. Public policies based on the therapeutic model, the Freud stuff, have failed over and over. And my response was that they haven't failed because they're working. They haven't failed because they're so much smaller than the market-based models. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like if you think, okay, well, society is trying to work through the fact that over half of its population has been involved in Jim Crow and disrespect and inequality and profited from it. So we've got to like digest that and figure out, what do we do to address this? Do we have reparations? Do we have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Do we have any type of coming to terms with it at all? No? Okay. No. But like, I think that would be helpful if we could get to it, but it's just stuck in these embryonic stages because the market is like, no, we need that labor. We need that inequality. Keep going. Shut up. Sit down. That's my feeling, that the market just dominates the discourse. And so it can't get off the ground.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But then we have like shameless. I don't know if I've heard various things about the term shameless. And I kind of think, yes, we use that term for politicians when they're just brazenly breaking the rules, right? They're shameless.
Mm-hmm.
They have no embarrassment about taking $230 million out of the U.S. Treasury for their own pockets. Right. Like, that's shameless. But it's not what I'm talking about with this like therapeutic, if we work it out with the shame thing. So it's sort of a separate thing, but it's sort of swimming out there. So I wanted to touch on it. What do you guys think about shame in society and whether it's helpful or like has how it relates to religion? Like, what do you think?
I don't know about, I definitely think it needs to be acknowledged that these things have happened. We need to work on educating the future so these won't repeat again. So shame, shame. Every country has shame for what they've done in their own societies. But you have to acknowledge it, fix it, learn from it, and don't let people forget, like, hey, this is what we did to fix this problem. If that makes sense.
I feel like in places that have tried to do this, like,
they have been squashed.
Yeah, they haven't been embraced at the end of the process, right? So I looked into Truth and Reconciliation Commissions because I was doing a little series on this for climate version on my channel. And so I looked at Canada with its Indigenous residential schools, and that TRC process. And I learned about South Africa's process in college. And, you know, Rwanda had one as well after the massacre in 94, Rwanda, and the genocide. So this process that they've gone through often results in like a whole bunch of recommendations, but then the bigger market system is too dominant. It's too necessary. The hierarchy is too necessary. And so there's no addressing of the, well, because the system did this to your people, like our people should enact some sort of change so that, you know, the same injustices don't continue. So it's capitalism. I mean, I'm anti-capitalist. It's the market being overbearing. That's what I guess it's boiling down to. Libro says the film Shame with Michael Fassbender is good. I don't think I know that. Is it Michael Fassbender? Is he, which country is he from? I mean, he can play anything. Amazing. Okay. Hello, Eva. Welcome. Greg says autonomy versus shame is what I think of from Erik Erikson's Stages of Psychosocial Development. Huh. I might need to know more about that psychosocial development, because I think of autonomy as opposed to blame. But versus shame. So shame, when you feel like you can't do something you're supposed to, or you're not who you're supposed to be. And autonomy is perhaps deciding who you are supposed to be. Is that fair? Is that why they're opposed? Let me know if that is on the right track. Eva says, convenient that we waited until everyone who lived as a slave was gone before we got to this stage. We still have their words.
Yep.
And Eva says, there's racism we can account for today that is still relevant today. Yeah, that's why I said Jim Crow. Like, because even if you're not like a slave owning family, if you came, your family came to America after emancipation and they, migrated to Minnesota, like there was still a system of racism. Eva says, I think it takes individuals cutting off bad individuals for society to accept them as bad. But then how do they change?
Yeah.
Is shame going to make them change? Is isolation going to make them change? Or are they going to like meet up with other off individuals and like form a militia?
That's exactly what I was thinking. They'll form their own commune of like-minded individuals because they were shamed.
And they'll think it's not righteous. So they'll maintain they'll dig in, is I guess what I'm getting at. Greg is doing a recommendation back to Libro saying the film Shane with Alan Ladd is good. Oh, is that about shame instead of Shane? Very different side tangent there. Libro says, I hope Lasch doesn't put you off from historian Richard Hofstadter, who he admired. Hofstadter's anti-intellectualism in American life and the paranoid style in American politics.
That was mentioned.
Okay. There were a lot of books mentioned.
There was a lot of books mentioned, yes.
I know one of these is on my Libro wish list. I'm not sure which one, because someone mentioned this before, probably in Agitation August. Yeah, I think I have another Christopher Lasch book that I hadn't read. Greg says, I've read more Hofstadter than Lasch, along with Louis Lapham's Age of Folly, timely books for today. Oh, okay. I recognize that name, but I don't think I have that in my thing, so I'm going to star it for later. We're 10 minutes over. I just noticed. I will try to bring us to a close here. I think I got one more, but we can skip it because it's not very cogent. Lynn says, would the therapeutic model not mean looking at oneself, what has happened to us, but also our own agency? What if we are more of the perpetrator? Yeah, you might have touched on that. I'm not very familiar with Freudian analysis. So when I was trying to see what he was describing and then using it as a metaphor and then critiquing the metaphor, I was a little lost towards the end there.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Freud either.
Fassbender is British. No, but the movie, Shame, because he's portrayed, I think he's Irish, actually. Maybe he's Northern Irish. I don't want to get into a swamp here. Let's see. Lynn says, maybe that's why Lasch didn't like the model. Oh, because as a perpetrator, he didn't want to have culpability? Is that what you mean? Or am I going off on a tangent? Eva says, isolation will make them change. Being called out makes them change. Yes. They must be called out by someone they care about being called out by. Yeah. Those they love most. Oh, this is a good discussion, guys.
Yeah.
Anita says, shame invokes a negative reaction in people, which is why people avoid addressing these issues. Right. But you're never going to like rise above it if you never excavate the cave. Eva says, or they are lost causes and can die in solitude. No mercy. What made you change? You aren't the same. For me, being called out made me change. I would say I've never been racist, but I've not always been anti-racist. But I am today. Yeah, that's a good reflection. have to think more about that. I think I don't know if it was shame or if it was guilt. And I don't know what Brene Brown would say about that, because I know there's like different triggers and definitions that I may be like trampling all over. So
right, the word that comes to mind in that situation is humbling.
Yeah.
And guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did write down a question.
Okay.
And I'm curious to know, what would Lasch's opinion be if he were alive today during today's events? Would he have a differing opinion? Would he go out of his way now, or especially with the internet, to view all sides of the hierarchy?
Yeah. Would the upsets and the disturbances and the shakings of the edifice of society be enough to make him look at the people who are not getting a fair shake?
Right. Because he obviously didn't see it in the 90s when my parents pulled me to all of these protests. But with the internet today and the news today, you see it everywhere.
Depending
Sometimes you have to be in the right group.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he would make of all the changes that are happening at the university level now because of funding being pulled and like being told to not take international students and not do grants. And like, it's obviously narrowing it to those people that he seemed to want to come out on top, like the hereditary. It's like he wants a meritocracy, but he wants those people. He recognizes that there's a hereditary aspect to it. He wants those people to acknowledge that they have obligations, which I think is right, but he's not acknowledging that it should be a more even playing field for that meritocracy to really be a meritocracy.
Yes.
And that's our responsibility to make it more. So
like whole families come over from other countries to put that one child that they have into a good college.
Yeah.
And that should be made available to anyone who wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, he doesn't offer any solutions or ideas.
Did he not at the end? Let me see if all my crazy writing at the end. He brings it back to the moral stuff. What does he say? I think he does want religion. Okay, here's my last little point that I'll bring up. On page 242, religion is consistently treated as a source of intellectual and emotional security, not as a challenge to complacency and pride. If we had religion that was a challenge to complacency and pride, that would be awesome. I don't see that we have that. I don't see that we have that as a equalizing machine. Yeah. I think we have vastly different experiences with different religions, and I don't think it's providing that role, but it would be nice if there's something did. But that's why I think we need cities and we need third places and we need conversation and we need public transit to have all that facilitated, which argues for a state, which argues for a strong state.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, so Eva's got a few comments here calling her out intellect, logic, and she learned through that process. Why do I have to label my emotion when I'm not the focus? I'm not sure. I think that might have been when I was talking about like what made me change. I'm not sure. I'd argue those who don't see themselves as racist but continue to not call anything out, they are the ones ashamed. Okay. That makes sense to me. Because they don't want to be the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
Where would they go if they cut off their family? Our society doesn't offer community very easily by design. Yeah. Great chats. you think Lasch could be seen as arguing for a meritocracy amongst white men? Yes, because that's who he, yeah, I mean, but why wouldn't it include everyone? Why would it include the citizenry or like the people in the country?
Yeah.
By his understanding, that wouldn't narrow it too far because it's going to be the hereditarily privileged white men who are going to rise first. So, yeah, I don't know that he's limiting it to that. This is how cults begin, religions. Oh, man. Man, you guys had good questions, good comments, and I'm sorry I've dragged Devon into 20 minutes over the hour.
It's all good.
It's such like a provoking. I won't say thought provoking. I'll say provoking.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad we got together to talk about it, and had some observers with some very couthy things to say. So we appreciate everyone's contributions and presence. Devon, do you have something that you wanted to highlight that's going to be the next thing coming up for your author biz?
Yes, I will have a newsletter subscriber only shop opening, and newsletter subscribers will get my books before they're released in February and March.
So some very cool fantasy novels. We've got
completed trilogy.
Let's see. Dissident Knight. With your talk about the Ivory Tower, you may find End Times by Peter Turchin. Okay, I got to start this comment. I need to come back to these. Interest, primarily about the overproduction of elites. Ooh, is that going to be like the book that I tried to read called Mediocre, about mediocre white men making it farther than they had any right to? It was an interesting book. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but I'll definitely check this one out. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. If you do read Hofstadter, I recommend thematically related films like Bob Roberts and A Face in the Crowd. In both films, the protagonist exploits class resentment brilliantly and dangerously. Ooh, that sounds like a hard one to take right now. Okay. Lovely. All right. These people are very high-flying intellectuals. I'm left behind in the dust here. So I'm just going to say thank you, everyone, for coming by, giving me some great reading discussions, and in to chat with Devon and myself. My regular times are Wednesday and Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So this week I'm going over a special election feature because it's almost time for an off-year election, and then a Samhain feature because we're almost to Halloween. Hopefully that'll be fun, and I'll see you there. Thank you, Devon.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. Bye, everyone. See you again soon.